Our presenters today are Charles Gould from Michigan State University Extension, who's championing agrivoltaics in the state, and Byron Kominek, who is executive director of the Colorado Agrivoltaics Learning Center, as well as the owner of Jack's Solar Garden, who is doing the same thing in Colorado, and I think a little bit broader out in the West. I thank you both for being willing to be a part of this.
So I've never presented with Byron, and actually he's one of my heroes in this movement of agri-solar, and he's been working in this arena for a long time, and he has a great story to tell. And I hope that you're attuned to some of the points that he's going to bring out, because they certainly pertain to what we want to accomplish here in Michigan. Um, I've been asked today to talk about the state of agrivoltaics in Michigan, but before I do that, I want to introduce you to actually what agrivoltaics is so that we're all understanding the same thing as both Byron and I talk. I come from this perspective that land should never be used exclusively for solar power production. It's just simply too valuable to harvest just solar energy. So we have two options when we talk about land management and conservation options. And those two land use options are what we call ecovoltaics and agrivoltaics. And these are broadly under the umbrella of agri-solar. But for our purposes today of the conversation that we want to have, ecovoltaics is really looking at the ecosystem services that can be provided on a solar site. So, for example, we're going to provide vegetation for that vegetation that provides food sources for pollinators, or we're going to select plant species that provide carbon sequestration or increase soil health, or they're going to provide habitat for uh, animals and insects, or they can improve water quality. So it's looking at what we want to accomplish with that solar project and then making that match if we're talking when we're talking about ecovoltaics. Agrivoltaics, on the other hand, is where we take the land and we set it up so that we can graze sheep or livestock or raise crops for food production. So in this particular picture that you see here, this is alfalfa that's being harvested in a solar project in Ohio. And alfalfa is a great thing that we can plant in between the solar arrays. In Michigan, our dairy farmers are needing alfalfa hay. There's a market for alfalfa hay. Alfalfa hay is a legume, so it puts nitrogen back in the soil. And it's a crop that we can grow very easily here in Michigan, in between solar arrays with a market that we can sell that alfalfa to. Now, I'm not gonna, that's all I'm gonna say about ecovoltaics. I'm gonna focus the rest of my presentation on agrivoltaics. And when we talk about agrivoltaic projects, one of the things that I'm really concerned about is that we have solar developers that come in and they say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this or we're gonna do that. We're gonna graze sheep or we're gonna make it so farmers can come in and raise grow lettuce or wheat or something like that." And then that never happens. And I think this is one of the things that we've really got to have a serious discussion about in Michigan is how do we move legitimate agrivoltaic projects forward that provides the opportunities for farmers to farm the ground, but yet produce the needed electricity that we need here in Michigan. So Based on recommendations from American Farmland Trust, agrivoltaic projects have two key features. It's the production of a marketable agricultural product through the full life of the solar array. And that takes planning. And that's best accomplished when we intentionally design the solar project with farmers in the decision-making process. And that way, that ensures that system is constructed, installed, and operated so that the land is suitable for agricultural production because a farmer has had input into how that solar project is designed. And it's really unfortunate in Michigan that we have so much contention around the issue of of building solar arrays. And I think if we would have come in with this approach, where we take the community approach and we involve all the stakeholders in the decision-making process, that I think we'd be in a much better place. Right now, the farming community is left out of those decisions. And if we want to continue to grow crops and raise livestock, they have to be an integral part of that. So let me give you some examples of what an agrivoltaic system looks like. This is a video that I took when I went down for some solar grazing training in Georgia. And you can see here that what they're trying to do here is move the sheep in this particular paddock to a new paddock. And they've got a sheepdog out there, which is absolutely indispensable for modern sheep production. It's the human factor here that is telling the dog to do one thing, and then the humans are standing in a place where they shouldn't be, and so the sheep are confused. And I want you to pay particular attention to the sheep as they pass underneath the solar. You can see that there's plenty of room. There's plenty of room there for sheep to pass underneath the solar arrays. They're not harmed by solar arrays. They virtually ignore solar arrays. What sheep do is when they graze is they really want to find the next blade of grass. And so they're not looking up. They're not, aware of their surroundings particularly. They're just looking for the next blade of grass. So that's an example of solar grazing. This is an example of planting broccoli. This happens to be a Massachusetts farm, and you can see that the solar arrays are elevated. Solar arrays don't have to be elevated. I want to make that point that we don't have to build tall solar arrays in order to have agrivoltaic systems, but we have to plan for them. Okay, so there are crops that we can raise where we don't have to raise the arrays above, to enormous heights, and then there are others where we would need to do that, but it takes planning. Here are examples of crops that can be grown around solar arrays, and if you look at those crops, we grow every single one of those crops here in Michigan. And we can grow these crops because of the Great Lakes. The effect of the Great Lakes makes it so we can grow crops that other states can't, especially those that are surrounding us. And we have a very robust agricultural economy here in Michigan. And the picture on the left is broccoli. And I want to point out the fact that broccoli is shaded, but look how it's growing. Okay? So, a lot of people say, oh, we can't grow crops because they're shaded out. Well, that's not true. We can grow crops, crops that do very well in shaded environments. The picture to the right of that is hops, and these hops are growing underneath solar arrays. This happens to be this picture I took in Germany when I was there last year for the World Agrivoltaic Conference. And this particular farmer raises a bountiful crop of hops underneath the solar arrays that you can see in this picture. Now, I wanted to give you some perspective about configurations of solar arrays. In the top row, that's pretty much what we have here in Michigan. We have um, the standard type of arrays, 3 feet off the ground, at the lowest fixed, they're fixed tilt, although we're getting more bifacial solar arrays, single axle trackers that are going in, and that's great. And that's an important step toward opening up the types of crops that we can grow here in Michigan. The bottom row shows some alternative configurations that are being done around the world. So I just wanted to give you a visual perspective of what a utility scale configuration actually could look like when we talk about growing crops or grazing livestock in those solar projects. So I want to dive now into the state of agrivoltaics in Michigan, and I'm really, really super excited about this. Um, and hopefully I can tell you why. But let me first introduce you to the sheep producer. This is a Genesee County sheep producer that I met 2 years ago. I went to his farm and very small flock, but he was looking for a way to grow his flock because he wanted, he wanted to expand his flock. He has markets. Um, he has an Arab population that is coming to his farm, performing the slaughtering ritual pertaining to, their religion, and he has more demand than he can supply. So he was looking for opportunities to access land that would allow him to meet the market demand that he has already established. So he entered into a vegetation management contract on a site in Wexford County, 150 acre, 156 acre site in Wexford County, and 174 acre site in Calhoun County. He grazed the Wexford County site twice. He grazed the Calhoun County site once. He started back in December of 24 with 200 ewes. Last year in July, he had 479 ewes and lambs. And this fall, when he took his sheep off the site in Calhoun County, he had 1,100 ewes and lambs. And he had gone out and bought some ewes, and ewes can give uh, multiple births. Uh, um, Besides just single births. So it's very easy to grow your flock when you have 2 lambs per ewe. And his success was so profound that he changed his business plan to solely focus on solar grazing. And he's in contract here, he's in negotiations right now with a solar developer that has an additional 1,000 acres that he wants grazed. Now that he's seen how this particular sheep producer has done it and had the success that he had and how the vegetation was managed, this particular solar developer now would like him to come in and graze his sheep. So I asked this person, I asked the sheep producer if he made a profit, and he looked at me and had a big wide smile on his face, and his answer was yes. So the important thing to understand about this opportunity here is we have 85,000 head of sheep in Michigan, 82,000 head of sheep. We dropped a little bit based on the last ag census. And if we're going to meet the demand for solar grazing, well, we don't have enough sheep to service the solar projects that are out there that would want uh, grazing, but we can scale up pretty rapidly to do that. But the important thing is we have about 1,300 farms, sheep farms in Michigan, and they are mostly small family farms, meaning that they work off the farm, they have day jobs, and then they come to the farm and they do their chores and whatnot. These individuals would want to only focus on sheep production, and a vegetation management contract on a solar project would allow them to quit their jobs, buy insurance, and stay on the farm only raising sheep. In Michigan, we have two sheep slaughtering facilities. The one that I'm most familiar with is Wolverine Packing in Detroit, and right now they're on their kill floor. They're about 47% of capacity. I was also in Detroit for a meeting well before Christmas, I guess, and it was a high-end restaurant. And right now, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but I can tell you that the lamb, I had three lamb medallions and some vegetables, and that was a $65 plate, and it went up from there. And I asked the server they're not why they're not putting Michigan lamb on the menu. And her response was volume, quantity, and price. And in Michigan, we could address all of those issues if we had the land that solar projects afford us and would make that land available to sheep producers um, to graze. All right, I conducted a survey. Myself and an intern that I had conducted a survey last summer, general attitudes and motivation toward solar grazing of Michigan sheep producers. And you can see here the left chart shows that they are strongly supportive of solar grazing. On the right side, what is their motivation? Additional income, because there's opportunities to fix the farm up. There's opportunities to grow, and you need that additional income in order to make those things happen. So there is support in the sheep industry for that, for solar grazing. The Michigan Tree Fruit Commission uh, is sponsoring a project that looks at three important questions. Can enough power be generated to provide meaningful benefit to growers? How will the fruit trees respond to agrivoltaic systems? And is the design economically feasible for grower adoption? This is a fruit industry focused project, and basically what they're going to do is fabricate solar um, uh, um, arrays that fit over those wooden posts that you see in that picture. So it's a farmer first approach rather than the solar developer coming in and saying, you're going to have to grow fruit trees in my system. And I love that concept. And that's the way it should be, is that it should be a farmer first concept. So this is conducted at our Michigan State University, West Central Michigan Research and Extension Facility in Hart. I wanted to point this out because this is really exciting, and this does speak to how communities are engaging with agrivoltaics. This is one of two site maps from Lightstar Renewables. They were able to secure two solar power production contracts from the city of Detroit. What you're seeing there is the maps from what they call the State Fair Solar Project. And the map on the left basically shows the kind of where the site is in proximity to Detroit itself. The map on the right is more of a blown up picture of what that project, what's there currently on the project. Now you'll see in the middle that dark green area that's shaded. That's where they're going to grow vegetables and small fruit. Now, I want to point out that the community wanted this, but they also wanted pollinator habitat on the outside of the agrivoltaic project. So that's why it's not all 100% growing vegetables and small fruit. It's what the community asks for. They want to see the flowers. They want to, have that pollinator habitat outside with the vegetables and small fruit on the inside. And I think this is the final state of Michigan, state of agrivoltaics in Michigan is myself or well, let's say MSU Extension and other universities throughout the United States were successful in getting a National Science Foundation grant to look at what's called restorative agrivoltaic landscapes. And basically, it's really understanding how solar arrays are impacting our agricultural land. And we have part of that project is funding a demonstration site at the old Kellogg Biological Station dairy facility. And you'll see on the picture on the right, the dairy facility is the buildings you can see on the in the white there, and then the solar arrays, the solar arrays in various configurations around the old dairy facility. And really, what we're trying to answer some really important questions around reducing impacts of solar projects and then enhancing the benefits of solar projects. And I'm really excited to be part of this project. Now, is there anyone actually that doing agrivoltaics? And the answer is yes. And at least 10% of ground-mounted solar in the United States is practicing agri-solar. And if you go to Inspire and you Google Inspire and add solar to it, this website will pop up. I wanted to just put a quick plug into a webinar series that I'm hosting in 2 weeks. The picture I showed you where they're harvesting alfalfa comes from the Savion site in Ohio. The researcher that's involved in that project is Eric Romick, and he's going to be talking about lessons learned from that agrivoltaic project and hay production and how that could be replicated in Michigan. Where Veggie Meets Volts, Dr. AJ Nair is going to talk about his experience in growing commercial vegetables or growing vegetables commercially in a solar project. That's a joint venture between a utility and Iowa State University. And then I'm bringing in Jess Gray to talk about solar grazing with cattle, inverter cattle specifically. And then the last one is Cy Carl, who is the sheep producer I introduced you to, who will be talking about solar grazing in Michigan, and he'll talk about lessons learned from grazing those two sites. And I'm really excited. This is going to be very instructive for those of you who have questions in these particular areas and want to see success stories that could be replicated here in Michigan. So, what are the take-home messages? Land under solar arrays can be used to grow crops, graze livestock, and support pollinating insects. Implementing agrivoltaics in a solar project begins early in the planning stage, and I can't emphasize that enough. And I also want to say that agrivoltaics from a planning process will really work well in community solar projects. So if there are proponents of community solar out there, agrivoltaics is one of the things that really fits well with that. Sheep producers have successfully grazed solar sites in Michigan, and then that paradigm shift is really what we need to reimagine food production and energy generation systems in Michigan. And I think that's my last slide. I just want to say that we're an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer. Our programs are open to all, and there's my contact information. And I'll toss it over to Byron.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate that. Morning, everyone from Colorado. Yeah, my name is Byron Kominek. I own and manage a solar array in Boulder County, south of Longmont, called Jack Solar Garden. I'll be sharing our story about that. And then I also run our nonprofit, the Colorado Agrivoltaic Learning Center, where we teach people about agrivoltaics, this land stewardship within solar arrays. And I understand the word agrivoltaics is oftentimes exclusionary. There's a number of folks that don't know what it means. So I will try not to use it much anymore. We are mainly talking about how do we manage that land within solar arrays. So to get going, if you come out to my family's farm, you'll see this sign, Jack Solar Garden. Obviously, my name isn't Jack. My grandfather, his name was Jack, and he's the one that purchased my family's land back in 1972. We got 24 acres of land here. For the most part, been haying it for a long time, losing money on it on an annual basis because property taxes are going up, but hay prices really aren't increasing all that much. And 24 acres of hay Doesn't pay much. So we needed to figure out something else to do. And around 2020 is when we were able to solidify all of our financing and get people ready to build a solar array. And here we go. So 2020, this is what my north pasture looked like, an 8-acre field where we brought out 2,400 steel I-beams. 2,400 steel I-beams on an 8-acre field, but we only have solar panels over just 4 acres of it. And we put up 3,276 solar panels, 380 watts a piece, at a couple different heights. Our taller ones are 8 feet flat. Our shorter ones are 6.5 feet flat. And when you look at the lowest edge of the panel, our short ones are 4 feet, and that's typically 2 feet taller than what's normal here in Colorado. Whereas folks in Michigan, your panels are probably normally my shorter panels. So I think the lowest edge of a lot of solar arrays in Michigan are between 3 and 4 feet. And so what we were able to do is build this 1.2 megawatt community solar garden that single axis tracking. If that doesn't mean much to you, I get it, I understand, but it's enough power for about 300 homes. That's the important part there. So think about 5 acres, 300 homes. And if you want to power a whole city off of solar, consider how much land you need. And then I know a lot of folks are out there saying, well, why don't we just put solar panels on every single rooftop? You would need acres and acres and acres and acres of rooftop space to put all the power needed for homes across your area. And that doesn't even include all the industries and the data centers that are coming. So solar is coming to farmland. I'm sorry to say, whether you like it or not, it's going to be required in many areas if we want to power more of our areas by clean energy. So this is what we got on our land. Single axis tracking simply means it faces east in the morning, face up in the afternoon, and west in the afternoon. Simply because the sun rises east to west throughout the course of the day, the panels follow. What we did back in 2021 was we wanted to work with a local ag organization to grow a variety of different crops underneath the panels to showcase that it's possible. So here's pictures of tractors working within the solar array. Tractors worked easily in solar arrays. People were like, well, let me put the panels straight up, or let me do all these weird things with the panels so I can get my tractor in there. That's nonsense. The panels turn so slowly. When the panels are facing east, I can drive on the west side of it. By the time they're flat, I can be driving in the middle of the array. When they're facing on the opposite direction, I can just drive on this other way. There is no need to lose power for and make all these different alterations for vehicles moving in it. It's not necessary. I wanted to show, hopefully this comes through. It is a time lapse of just one day out on the farm, so you can watch the sun and shade move over the field. So as the panels turn, we have the east edge of the panel has morning sunlight. And so that's the coolest morning here. We get about 50% of daily sunlight on the two edges, on the two beds on the east side and the west side. That middle bed that's getting the majority of daily sunlight, they get about 70% of daily. And then there it is, the right side getting afternoon sun. Main difference in Colorado, where we're at elevation, is that it's much cooler in the morning than it is in the afternoon. We can have 50-degree mornings and 105 degrees in the afternoon. And so when you have direct sunlight first thing in the morning, that's very useful. A lot of crops. Direct sunlight in the afternoon, you're going to have a more select group of crops that appreciate that heat with direct sunlight. So that's what we've been learning. We worked with Sprout City Farms, a local nonprofit organization, over the past 5 years to grow a variety of crops. Here's ladies from that organization setting drip tape out in the fields and growing a world of vegetables. You name the market garden vegetable, it has been grown underneath my solar panels, from carrots and tomatillos, beans, eggplant, peppers, to garlic, onions, radishes, kohlrabi, kale, all of it goes on. What we have found is that a lot of the leafy greens do exceedingly well. So if you ever think about having grown basil in full sun and being disappointed, right? You get this tiny little leaf. And once you give it some shade, it's going to have a larger leaf because it needs a larger surface area to collect more sunlight. And so what we find out here, where it's hotter and drier than where you all are, is that those leaf structures get bigger. And so we have larger cabbage, we have larger lettuce, and that's what we want from it. We don't necessarily have larger pieces of okra or larger tomatoes. That's still in research by friends at University of Arizona. And we actually started the very first CSA underneath solar panels back in 2022, I believe, 2023, somewhere in that time frame. We did 3 years of that CSA. And now I know there's one in Michigan now, and there's one in Hawaii, and I think there are more being planned around the country. But we not just vegetables, we've grown a variety of other things. So different types of herbs. We work with a local botanicals company called Wish Garden Herbs to learn more about which herbs of commerce can grow here. So from yarrow to silver sage, clary sage, where you distill down the oils out of the flowers and they turn it into products for the beauty industry. Monarda here, we have peppermint, lemon balm, rue, sweetgrass, different types of culinary sages, a variety of different types of crops. And I really love the perennials because they get the most benefit from the solar panels. As the drip edge of the solar panels soak more moisture deeper into the ground, right at the edges of it, that deep moisture is available to the deeper roots of our perennial plants, where a lot of our annual vegetables only have roots in the top handful of inches. They don't necessarily get the full benefit of having that deeper soil moisture. So I really enjoy having perennials, and that's led me to learn more about these beautiful plants, raspberries. I've been growing raspberries underneath our panels since 2022. They do great. I think it was only the first season that I irrigated them, even for a month, and then after that, forgot about them, and they just kept growing and producing berries. And they are able to access that additional water because they have slightly deeper roots than our annuals. But one of the coolest things about it is this. Back in 2022, we had a frost that came through at the end of September. It was a soft frost, so it touched 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it was enough to knock out the berry plants outside the solar array. So the picture on the left-hand side are all my berries outside of the solar array. And they went dormant. And I just walked over maybe 300 feet to underneath the solar panel. So this picture was just taken moments after each other to the berries growing within my solar array, and they're still producing. And why is that? Well, the panels at night still flat. Earth is still irradiating heat. That heat gets trapped in that space. And so then we have the flowers, they don't freeze, the berries, they don't freeze. And we're able to continue growing berries underneath our panels an additional month in most seasons because of that soft frost protection. So we can think of these panels as season extension for in hotter and drier areas. So like in Colorado, we have our cool season, which is essentially end of April to mid-June, and then we have our hot season end of June through mid-September, and then we have a very short cool season again. Well, having these panels out here, it just shrinks our hot season, and so then it's our cool seasons are elongated on both sides. So that's fun to see. Here are some researchers from University of Arizona. We've worked with folks from National Renewable Energy Laboratory, all learning more about how these different microclimates impact different types of vegetation underneath our panels. Well, I missed one from Colorado State University. They've also been learning how our grasses grow quite well within the solar array, so that these sheep can actually have grass to graze. So we found out, like on a normal year, we get about the same amount of grass growth within the solar array. On a wet year, we get less grass growth within the solar array versus outside. But on a really dry year, we get about 20% more grass growth within the solar array. And that's important in hot and dry areas. And we are in a drought. I haven't seen much snowfall here in Colorado. So I'm going to be concerned about my grass growing outside my solar array, whereas I'll be a little bit more confident about it inside of it. We've showcased a variety of different animals here. So I've grazed sheep underneath my panels for the past few years. We've had chickens and ducks and geese hanging out in the panels. I hear about other folks trying out some pigs and turkeys. Everything wants shade when it's hot outside. You want shade when you're having your beer in the afternoons, wherever you are. Everything does. Plants to animals. And so having a lot more shade out and about during the middle of summer is a useful thing. And cattle like it too, as Charles was talking about, Jess Gray talking about how they're grazing cows in solar arrays. We've brought out cows in our solar array since 2022 just to showcase to people that these animals fit, that they can work in there, that they enjoy eating. First and foremost, what any animal does when it gets in the solar array, puts its head down and starts chomping on the grass. So what we find is it's really important when we're building these solar arrays to make sure that the grass stays intact. And if you have people coming through and blading it and grading the entire site and leaving dirt there, what are the animals going to eat? It's really important to work with counties when they're doing permitting of these projects to don't destroy the land during the construction. Otherwise, it's going to take so long for these animals to have anything to eat. Then what are they going to do? But because we did a good job of maintaining our vegetation within the solar array, whenever we bring out the cows, they just go to town eating. So here's some dairy cows over the past couple of years that we've had. And I know what you're thinking. These animals, they're so big. They're like 10 feet tall, 10,000 pounds each. Not at all. They're like yearlings are 500 to 800 pounds, right? They stand maybe 4 feet at largest with our dairy cows that we brought out 5 feet tall. And when they rub up on the solar panels or rub up on the steel I-beams, they barely do anything to it. We have 10-mile-an-hour windstorms that come through that shake the whole solar array a lot more than one of these cows rubbing up on a steel I-beam. And I've clocked 80-mile-an-hour winds out on our farm. And our structure is built to handle 145-mile-an-hour winds. We can design solar arrays to handle this. It is not rocket science. I swear to God, it is not rocket science. All it is putting maybe the piles a little bit deeper, maybe a slightly thicker. Outside of that, not that big of a deal. I've even seen here in this top left picture, this comes from the Hua Enterprises, where they've had cows in a solar array where the leading edge of the panels was only 2 feet off the ground. And they put out 40 head of yearlings out within a solar array that was 10 acres large. And they only had one panel get damaged. And that was because they had two animals that wouldn't leave when they wanted them to. So they shook their favorite food and got them to run through where there was a narrow pass, and one of the panels got bent. It didn't even break the panel. It just bent the frame of the panel. Animals can coexist with the solar arrays. I even have a beautiful picture I can't share on here, but of elk hanging out within a solar array, like huge rack underneath the panels, just chilling out in the shade. Animals can be in this space, and it's useful to them. These other pictures are other solar arrays around our state in Colorado, where a solar array in the top right corner here was built over a vineyard for Colorado State University to study how well the wine grapes grow there. The bottom right-hand picture is a very contentious site over the past handful of years in Mesa, Colorado, where they actually put up a sprinkler system underneath the solar panels to help water the grass so that there would be more food for the sheep throughout the course of the season. Then on the bottom left-hand side, where you know how you have wood slats for windbreaks or for snow breaks, right? These folks took that idea and put solar panels there so that you can power a battery or charge a battery throughout the course of the day. And then when the winds get too high, it helps to stop the wind coming through, which helps the land just to the leeward side of it have less desiccation so that there's more soil moisture there. There's all different types of activities that you can do with it. That's the fun part about this. And this is all important because climate change is happening. We're going to get hotter and drier here in Colorado. More shade is going to be more beneficial. I find that the best grass in my hayfield that doesn't have a solar array on it is just to the east of an elm tree that casts shade on the ground. And that applies over and over within a solar array, no matter where you are in Colorado. Wherever there's a little bit more shade, more things grow, simply because shade cools things, it keeps moisture in the ground longer. And so what my nonprofit organization is doing about it is we're trying to educate a lot of people. We're putting on a huge conference here in Colorado next week. We're going to try to do more conferences in the future for the Western states. We have a cool new movie called Save the Farm, Save the Future. It's available on YouTube. but you all could help us. We just paid to make it available on PBS stations. If you would please reach out to your local PBS station. It's free for them. There's a little link right there. Share it with them. Say, hey, we would love it if you would play this during Earth Month in April. That would be amazing to have a bunch of PBS stations around the country getting to learn more about how we can have agriculture and solar arrays coexisting. We also educate thousands of people per year out at our solar array, lots of kids. We do workshops for government officials. We're helping to kickstart agribusinesses within the solar array, from having chicken businesses to herbs in solar arrays, not just mine, but we're working with other solar arrays to see how we can get those started in other places. We published a land use code guidance for deploying agrivoltaics in Colorado, but the tenets of it can be used in any county, no matter where you are, because a lot of it is around wire management. Don't screw up the land during construction, and make sure that the site is accessible for agricultural activities, because agriculture requires movement. And if you have a facility that makes it difficult for movement to occur, whether it's an animal, a person, a vehicle, or a track, whatever, it makes it harder. So we can design these solar arrays so that they are more accessible, that the land is better after the fact, and that it's safe for people and livestock. So we talk about building right for tomorrow, because these solar arrays, once they're built, they're going to be in the ground for a very, very long time. A lot of folks just think it's 20 years and they rip them out. The hell if that's going to happen. If I can repower my solar array in 20 years and make more money off of it, I'm going to. And same way with any of those private equity firms that own solar arrays, if they can still make money off of it in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, that land is going to stay solar. And it makes sense. But if we don't build the solar arrays in the right way now, we are not going to be able to access that land for the next 60, 70, 80 years until that does get ripped out. So that's why it's important to talk about how we build our solar arrays now, so that our grandchildren and thereafter can still use that space. That's all I got for you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Byron. I'm reminded of a cartoon I saw years ago of a classroom where one boy raises his hands and he says, "Mr. Jones, can I be dismissed? My brain is full." You have filled our brains, and thank you so much for that. My other comment is I'd love to see how you move 1,100 sheep from one county to another county in order to do the grazing. I'm sure they can do it, but wow, what a challenge that must be.
Use semi trucks
Uh-huh.
if you're going from
Lots,
county to county, for sure. Yeah.
lots of them, yeah. So let us open this up for questions and answers. I'm sure there are plenty of both. So, and I see Tim's hand up right away. So why don't you go at it, Tim?
Okay. Excuse me. I always wonder when I see this project, where's the energy going? Is it just being used on the farm? Are you connected to the grid necessarily? I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Getting the energy from the sun to some usable location.
Our power, we sell it to various clients through our local utility. It's enough power for about 300 homes. So it's additional funding for our farm to not have to rely on haying, which loses us money.
Yeah. Utility scale solar projects are putting the electricity they produce on the grid. So
I may follow up, excuse me. You have to put in the cabling then to somehow get the panels connected to the grid, right?
correct.
I'm going to jump in here and read a question from the chat. that's related. So thank you for bringing up community solar conundrum here in Michigan, Charles. Can you speak a little on the differences in the policy environments in Colorado and Michigan that enable agrivoltaics? That is, Colorado having great community solar policies, dual use incentives, et cetera, versus Michigan having no true community solar and only the rather fraught qualified facility route if you want to be or work on a modestly sized site like Jack's Solar Garden. Versus the encouragement of large-scale massive development. Can you share thoughts on impact of Michigan legalizing sensible community solar and advocating for inclusion of agrivoltaic incentives like were in the House bill last year?
Byron, can you start with what the Colorado situation is?
Yeah, I can talk about. I would not say that our community solar garden legislation here is absolutely the best. I mean, it oftentimes precludes people like me to be able to build a solar array because of how they allow our local utility to make the selection between companies as to who can build community solar gardens. Like we even have a perverse scheme here where solar companies are building solar arrays for our utility and then paying the utility to take the power, which is crazy. Like because of the tax credits and things, there was that happened. But anyway, community solar garden legislation here was put in place in 2010 and updated in 2019. It currently allows people to build upwards of a 5 megawatt AC system where you can sell to at minimum 10 different clients within the grid that you connect to. It's a very competitive process. The local solar developers are very keyed into this process. So if there's a local farmer interested in it, it makes it extraordinarily challenging for them to figure out how to go about that process. And our local utility is not overly inclined to make it easier.
So I think that's a lesson that we can take from Colorado as we look at community solar legislation. Um, Community solar, the size of community solar, at least the proposed size, is ideal for small farmers. It's the right size to graze sheep. There's just a lot of advantages from an agrivoltaic standpoint for community solar. Um, and I would just hope that we can at some point in the not too distant future, get some legislation that would empower community solar to move forward in a way that would benefit agriculture. And I see Rob asked the question, how many megawatts are generated on these farms? Rob, what farms are you talking about?
The ones in Michigan that have these solar arrays. I'm just curious. It may vary, but I'm just interested how many megawatts are trying to be generated. And do you have any numbers?
I don't off the top of my head, but roughly 1 acre is 5 to 10 megawatts capacity, and I think that number is maybe closer to 7. So you can extrapolate the megawatt power outage based on acreage.
Thank you.
Consumer Energy has a program called Solar Garden, where they put up 1 megawatt, 3 megawatts, and I think Cadillac has a 8 megawatt program that can be used for teaching this agrivoltaic underneath their existing.
So I'm in Ottawa County, and there is a site just south of the Grand Valley State University, and if I remember correctly, it's a 14-acre site, and yes, it is perfect for teaching agrivoltaics. So I had a sheep producer that was interested in grazing that, and got consumers energy engineers together. We went over and looked at the site with GVSU faculty, and thought we had an agreement. And it turns out that GVSU felt that the liability was too great, even though the fence was like 10 feet tall around the site. Just didn't see a way to make that happen, which is really unfortunate. The other strike, though, that it had against it, it had three different types of fescue varieties, which were turf grass, one of which had the endophyte fungus in it. And for sheep are less susceptible to the endophyte fungus, but cattle are very susceptible to it. And for sheep, it can cause fescue foot, and they can abort lambs and things like that. And there's really not a whole lot of nutrient value in those turf grass varieties. So it would have been better for vegetable production if if we'd had that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, they're in the process of upgrading the panels right last year, I believe. So they're looking at upgrades, getting more power out of it. What are we doing with the old panels? That site still has 10 years worth of life in the old panels. Let's use that somewhere.
I'm going to read a quick couple questions from the chat, and then we'll go to Samantha and then Tim, I saw next. Do the solar panels impact the amount of pesticides required? And then I'll have one more after that.
I think Byron's in a great place to answer that question.
Pesticides, I don't know. We do have folks out on our land that are studying insects. We found that there was a very small change between like grasshoppers outside the solar array versus inside. We find that the nymph grasshoppers prefer the sunlight and not the shade. So they get started outside the solar array, and once they're adults, they move in. We've noticed different beetle species preferring different parts of the microclimates. Like some of them prefer being directly underneath the torque tube, others prefer being more out in the sun. So insects too have a different desire for where they are. We found one year we planted squash at the east edge of the panels, and what happened was dew kept dripping on the squash, and then the leaves were always wet, and so that invited a ton of cucumber beetles. It had a whole bunch of mildew on it, whereas just 2 or 3 feet away was the squash being planted in the middle of the row, and it had none on it. There were no beetles, there were no mold on it whatsoever. So it was really because of where that plant was put. So I think it offers. So a single axis tracking system offers a variety of microclimates that you can figure out potentially which of the microclimates a species of insects does not prefer for a specific type of plant. But if people want to go out there and spray stuff, people just go out and spray stuff. Like that's just what folks do. A lot of solar companies actually use tons of herbicide on solar arrays because vegetation is like historically seen as the enemy of solar because it grows tall enough to shade the panels, or it's a fire hazard. And so then they'll herbicide the hell out of a whole site. And then what that shows too is they don't understand that once you herbicide it, then it all dies and it turns brown, and now it's a fire hazard. Whereas if it's green, it's not a fire hazard because it has water in it. So yes, people, it depends on how folks choose to use their land as to what different sides they use.
And I would just say from a grazing standpoint, I think what we've noticed is that the sheep are not selective, especially when it pertains to to young weeds. Canadian thistle, for example, they'll eat Canadian thistle when it's young. Okay, when it bolts, even herbicide is not the last resort. You go in with a bush hog and you mow it down, and use herbicide as a last resort. If you're going to graze.
And then Tim, if you don't mind, I'm going to read this question from Maud. What are the most common misconceptions about agrivoltaics that create community resistance? And what, in your thoughts, do we overcome those?
I think a lot of the misconceptions come around just solar in general. I've heard people thinking that the birds get killed by slamming into the panels, which doesn't happen. Um, I hear that all sorts of metals are being leached out of the panels and that are killing people because they're eating the crops grown there, and that doesn't happen. Like it's the glass, the tempered glass on the solar panels have water dripping off of it. The water has no contact with any metals to be able to leach out of them. If that were the case, then the solar arrays would be all the solar arrays would just be constantly shutting down because all the metals that actually make them work are exiting the panels, and that doesn't make sense. Um, I've heard that the electromagnetic pulses from the solar panels and the inverters cause animals and people to go crazy, and that's nonsense too. Like this phone has EMPs that match that comes out of an inverter or out of a solar panel. So, like if it's not driving you crazy sitting in your pocket, it's not being out in the solar array ain't doing it either. One of the interesting things I've heard from some places, especially out on the East Coast, is that they say sheep grazing isn't enough anymore. I think we have 5 million sheep in our country, close to 100 million cows. And there's a number of counties that have been predominantly cattle that say sheep grazing isn't sufficient to meet their standards of agrivoltaics, which I find interesting. I think it really should fall down to the farmers and ranchers, not necessarily to the government or to the solar companies to decide what makes sense there. If somebody can make use of the land in it, then they should make use of it. Any other misconceptions? I think, oh, there's another big one that people say, oh, agrivoltaics is so expensive. Oh, it's like 3 times, 5 times the cost. And if that was the case, I wouldn't be able to do it because I built the solar array. It was $1.40 per watt for the construction price. And if it was more than that, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford it. And the vast majority of solar arrays in our country have sheep grazing in it, where the solar company did not change anything with the design of the system. They didn't make it any more expensive whatsoever. And they have lots of sheep grazing going on out there. And sometimes the sheep grazers pay them, and sometimes the solar companies pay the sheep grazers. So there is a ton of nonsense out there about how expensive agrivoltaics is. Now, if you get some researchers that get super excited and they want to build 20 feet tall so that they can have the world's largest combine go underneath of it, yeah, I'm sure that'd be expensive, but nobody else is going to do that. And so the main area where I see the cost implications for agrivoltaics coming in are when we have researchers going wild with what they want to do and making building sites that nobody else can do commercially, and then saying that is what the cost of everything is. But I got to head out now. So pleasure, y'all. Be well.
Thank you so much for joining and sharing your knowledge with us.
Byron, thank you. And I would like to just point out that Jack's Solar Farm is available for tours if you ever happen to be out on the Front Range in the Rockies. Stop in. It's a great tour and a real eye opener. So thanks so much, Byron, for everything you're doing.
April through October. Please don't show up at my house over Christmas. All right. Bye, folks.
See you later.
My question's about batteries. What types of batteries are used in these solar arrays to either store the energy before it's moved on, or just to keep it there?
They're lithium batteries.
Yeah.
But I will say that that is one of the things that's really exciting about this field is the research that's been going on and how things are going to change. They've developed batteries now that are salt-based, sodium-based, and there's plenty of sodium to go around. We don't need lithium. And they've also discovered ways to make solar arrays more efficient without the metals, or even reducing the metals that are in there now. So, the past has got us where we're at with a lot of fear and a lot of trepidation. but the future doesn't have that same picture.
Uh, Thank you, Charles, for your
Absolutely.
sincere, and thank you for your efforts on their behalf. I'm looking forward to seeing what you produce in the state of Michigan in the future, and I'll tune into your webinars for sure.
Well, I'm a resource. I mean, I'm a non-biased, research-based resource on this topic. I've been with Michigan State University Extension for 31 years, and I've worked with just about every type of farmer in Michigan, and we have the best farmers in Michigan, and without a doubt, Byron might dispute that, but I know them personally, and this just provides them with an opportunity to strengthen their farm income, be diversified, and build our Michigan farm economy. So, well, you guys have a great weekend, and
Thanks again, Charles, and thank you all for attending this.